September 19, 1944. The mist-blanketed fields near Arras, France. First Lieutenant Merwin Men of the 37th Tank Battalion gripped his Sherman's turret rim as his gunner scanned the foggy terrain ahead through the periscope. They had been cautioned about Panthers, the formidable German tanks whose angled armor had proven largely impervious to standard American shells. What Men and his crew were unaware of was that tucked in their ammunition rack were 6 rounds that would alter the tactical balance of armored combat. 6 M93 high-velocity armor-piercing rounds, each with a tungsten carbide core, capable of transforming their medium Sherman into what German tank crews would soon dread as an unexpected hazard. The psychological effect of this ammunition would prove as decisive as its penetration, undermining German confidence in their tank superiority and forcing a complete reevaluation of Panther invincibility. The narrative of how a specialized munition changed armored warfare begins not on European battlefields, but in American testing grounds and factories, where metallurgists and ballistics engineers raced against time to solve a problem threatening to compromise U.S. armored operations. In early 1944, the U.S. Army faced a predicament military planners had failed to foresee. The M4 Sherman, backbone of American armored divisions, was encountering German tanks it could not consistently defeat head-on. The Panther, Germany's response to the Soviet T-34, combined a powerful 75mm high-velocity gun with an 80mm glacis plate sloped at 55 degrees, creating an effective thickness of roughly 140mm, nearly impervious to American tank guns. U.S. intelligence had underestimated both the numbers and quality of Panthers to be deployed. By June 1944, when Allied forces landed in Normandy, 38% of German tanks in the theater were Panthers, far more than predicted. Many were operated by inexperienced crews, but their armor rendered conventional American tank guns ineffective from the front. The 75mm M3 gun on most Normandy Shermans could not pierce a Panther's frontal armor at any range. Rounds would ricochet off the sloped glacis, leaving Sherman crews exposed to return fire from the Panther's powerful gun, capable of destroying a Sherman from over 2,000 meters. Even the upgraded 76mm M1 gun, entering units in July 1944, struggled against Panther armor. Using standard M62 armor-piercing capped rounds, the 76mm could penetrate 109mm of armor at 1,000 millimeters at 0-degree obliquity. This was effective against Panzer-IVs and many German assault guns, but the Panther's sloped frontal plating remained essentially immune. The 76mm could pierce the Panther's gun mantlet only at very close range, usually under 100 meters, a distance at which the Panther's superior firepower made engagement extremely hazardous. The issue was not the gun itself, but the ammunition it fired. The rollout of the 76mm gun had been delayed by bureaucratic hesitation and slow recognition of necessity. The first M4 Shermans mounting the 76mm M1 gun rolled off production lines in January 1944. These M4A1 76W Shermans arrived in Britain on April 10, 1944, with 130 tanks delivered to prepare for the Normandy invasion. Yet, despite availability, American commanders did not deploy these improved tanks on D-Day. The reasons were multiple. Crews lacked sufficient training on the new system, logistical concerns about maintaining 2 ammunition types complicated supply, and many commanders believed the 75mm gun would suffice against expected opposition. By early July 1944, reports from Normandy painted a dire picture. On July 2nd, complaints about the 75mm gun's ineffectiveness against German armor reached General Dwight Eisenhower. His reaction, recorded in historical accounts, revealed high-level frustration. "You mean our 76 won't knock these Panthers out? I thought it was the wonder gun of the war." Witnesses recalled he continued with stronger language, expressing anger that ordnance assurances about the 76mm's capability had proven overly optimistic. A board convened on July 12, 1944, confirmed what crews had already learned. Standard American weaponry could not reliably defeat Panthers from the front. General Omar Bradley immediately ordered the 76mm Shermans rushed from Britain to the front. On July 25, 1944, during Operation Cobra, 102 M4A1 76W tanks made their combat debut. Initial engagement reports were sobering. While the 76mm was an improvement over the 75mm, it still struggled against Panther frontal armor at combat distances. Sherman crews quickly realized they needed to maneuver for side shots or aim at the Panthers. Gun mantle it at close range, neither tactically appealing against a tank that could eliminate them from 2,000 meters away. The solution came from metallurgy and physics. By July 1944, American ordnance engineers had developed the T4 round, later standardized as the M93 HVAP. High-velocity armor-piercing ammunition represented a radical departure from conventional rounds. The projectile featured a tungsten carbide core, one of the hardest materials, encased in a lightweight aluminum body with a ballistic cap. This concentrated kinetic energy into a smaller, denser penetrator while reducing overall mass. The result was remarkable. The M93 achieved a muzzle velocity of 1,036 ms compared to 792 ms for the standard M62, a 244 ms increase translating directly into penetration. At 1,000 yards, 914 on M, the HVAP round could pierce 160 mt of armor at 10-degree obliquity, enough to challenge the Panther's gun mantlet, which measured 100 mm on early variants and was later reinforced to 120 mm on later models. This meant reliable penetration at ranges up to 1,000 km instead of point-blank distance. The mantle suddenly became a viable target for Sherman crews who had previously been forced to attempt desperate flank attacks or retreat. But the development of HVAP represented only half the solution. Production was another matter entirely. The T4 round depended on tungsten carbide, a strategic material imported primarily from China, which produced 36% of global tungsten supply before the war. Tungsten was critical to numerous war industries with machine tools, armor-piercing ammunition for multiple calibers, armor plate hardening, and various industrial processes, all competing for limited supplies. American tungsten demand for HVAP ammunition alone consumed hundreds of metric tons annually. Each 76mm HVAP round contained approximately 0.88 kg of tungsten carbide, meaning a Sherman carrying 6 rounds required nearly 5 kg of this scarce material. China produced approximately 10,000 metric tons of tungsten concentrates in 1944, but this had to serve all Allied needs across all applications. The United States supplemented Chinese imports with domestic production from limited deposits in Colorado, Nevada, and California, but total availability remained constrained. Germany's tungsten position was far worse, with Swedish imports declining sharply as the war turned against the Reich and domestic production remaining minimal. By 1945, German factories desperately hoarded tungsten for machine tools needed for aircraft engine production, while Panther crews received only standard ammunition. The United States Ordnance Department had been testing HVAP projectiles since spring 1942, but production at scale did not begin until after the Normandy landings revealed the extent of the Panther problem. In July 1944, production of 3-in HVAP rounds for tank destroyers reached 1,000 rounds. August saw 1,000 rounds of 76mm HVAP produced. September yielded another 1,076mm rounds. Not until November 1944 did monthly production reach 5,000 rounds for the 76mm, ramping to 7,000 rounds per month by January 1945. By March 1945, approximately 33,000 rounds of 76mm HVAP ammunition had been produced, representing a significant industrial effort, but still a fraction of what was needed. By February 1945, the average 76mm Sherman in Europe had received a total of 5 HVAP rounds. 5 rounds to face an enemy deploying Panthers as the standard tank in Panzer divisions. A Sherman company with 17 tanks would possess 85 HVAP rounds total, while facing German units that might field 30 or more Panthers. The first HVAP rounds reached the European theater in August 1944, but their arrival was overshadowed by broader tactical problems. The Normandy hedge had forced American armor into close-quarters combat, where superior German guns could ambush Sherman columns. Tank crews faced an enemy who'd learned to position Panthers in Hullen positions, exposing only the heavily armored turret while keeping the more vulnerable hull hidden. German doctrine emphasized first-shot capability with Panthers waiting in prepared positions, allowing Sherman columns to approach before opening fire from ranges where American return fire was ineffective. The psychological impact on American tank crews was severe. Crews nicknamed the Sherman the Ronson lighter, claiming it lit on fire every time. While post-war analysis showed this reputation was exaggerated, the perception shaped behavior. Tank commanders who spotted Panthers often chose to call for artillery or air support rather than engage directly, ceding tactical initiative to an enemy who could be defeated with the right ammunition and tactics. The arrival of HVAP rounds began changing this calculus, but slowly hampered by the scarcity of the ammunition and the lack of training on its capabilities and limitations. The first widespread combat test of HVAP ammunition came not in Normandy's hedge, but in the open country of Lorraine, where American armored divisions had broken out into terrain that favored German defensive tactics. September 1944 found Lieutenant General George Patton's Third Army deep in France, racing toward the German border with logistics stretched to breaking point. The 4th Armored Division, one of the most effective American armored formations, had advanced aggressively, seizing a bridgehead over the Mosel River near Aricourt. German High Command recognized the threat. If Patton's armor reached the Rhine and crossed into Germany proper, the industrial heart of the Reich would be exposed. General Hasso von Mantoyel's 5th Panzer Army received orders to counterattack, destroy the American bridgehead, and push back Patton's advance. The German force assembled for this attack included 2 newly formed panzer brigades, the 111th and 113th, equipped primarily with Panther tanks fresh from German factories. On paper, the German advantage appeared overwhelming. The 2 brigades together fielded approximately 150 tanks against combat command. A of the 4th Armored Division, which possessed roughly 50 Sherman tanks, the 113th Panzer Brigade alone entered battle with approximately 90 tanks and assault guns in both battalions combined, including 42 Panthers and 40 Panzer IVs. German planners anticipated a rapid victory. The Panthers' technical superiority should compensate for any American advantages in logistics or air support. They were fundamentally mistaken. The Battle of Aricourt, fought over 11 days from September 18th to 29th, would become the largest tank engagement fought by American forces until the Battle of the Bulge. More importantly, it would demonstrate that American tank crews, properly trained and equipped, could defeat technically superior German armor through superior tactics, combined arms coordination, and judicious use of high-velocity armor-piercing ammunition. The morning of September 19th began with thick fog blanketing the rolling terrain around Aricourt. German reconnaissance was limited. The panzer brigades, lacking proper scouting units, advanced blindly into terrain held by American forces who knew the ground and had established defensive positions. At approximately 8 a.m., elements of the 113th Panzer Brigade penetrated American outposts east and south of Aricourt. The German tanks, factory-new Panthers with inexperienced crews, moved forward in column formation, a tactical error that veteran American tankers immediately exploited. Captain Kenneth R. Lamison's C Company, 37th Tank Battalion, held positions along key approaches to Aricourt. His Sherman crew had been briefed on the HVAP rounds in their ammunition racks, 6 rounds per tank. Use them wisely, the briefing had emphasized, against Panther turrets or mantlets at ranges where velocity remained sufficient for penetration. The fog that hindered German reconnaissance now worked in favor of American defenders. A section of Lamison's Shermans occupied positions south of the village when the first Panther materialized from the mist, barely 75 meters away. At this range, the Panther's superior long-range gunnery meant nothing. The American gunner fired instantly. The HVAP round, traveling at over 1,000 ms, struck the Panther's gun mantlet. The tungsten carbide core punched through the curved cast steel and detonated the ammunition stored directly beneath the gun breech. The Panther exploded, its turret lifting slightly from the force of the secondary detonation. 2 more Panthers emerged from the fog in quick succession. Both were destroyed within seconds, their crews having no time to effectively return fire in the limited visibility. The remaining German tanks turned away. Crews shocked by the sudden loss of 3 Panzers to what they had been told were inferior American tanks. Throughout the morning of September 19th, Similar engagements erupted across the Aerort sector. American tanks using the fog as concealment engaged Panthers at ranges where HVAP rounds were most effective. The German tactical deployment proved disastrous. Advancing in column without proper reconnaissance, Panther crews repeatedly exposed their thinner side armor to American flanking fire. Near Aerort's command post, a platoon of M18 Hellcat tank destroyers, also equipped with 76mm guns and HVAP ammunition, engaged German armor at close range. The fast-moving tank destroyers proved devastatingly effective in the close-range fog-shrouded combat. By noon, as the fog lifted, American forward artillery observers could coordinate fire with defending tank companies. P-47 Thunderbolt fighter bombers of the 405th Fighter Group arrived overhead, diving through gaps in the cloud to strike German armor with rockets and machine guns. The combination of American advantages became clear. While the Panther possessed superior armor and firepower as an individual weapon system, American forces employed combined arms tactics as standard doctrine. German tanks advanced without adequate artillery support, without air cover, without infantry to clear American defensive positions. American forces coordinated armor with artillery, air power, infantry, and tank destroyers in an integrated system that overwhelmed German technical advantages. When Panthers encountered these prepared defenses, they were destroyed piecemeal despite their superior capabilities. The HVAP ammunition did not make Sherman tanks equal to Panthers in technical specifications, but warfare is not conducted according to technical specifications alone. Tanks are destroyed by crews who exploit vulnerabilities under combat conditions. The Panther's gun mantlet, which allowed the 75mm gun to elevate and pivot, created a vulnerability. The junction between turret and hull, side plating, and engine deck all became targets that Shermans armed with HVAP rounds could now engage successfully at combat distances that had previously been extremely hazardous. Even more striking to German morale was the psychological effect of realizing their armor was not invincible. Panther crews had been instructed to believe their tanks were immune to frontal fire from American weapons. Intelligence briefings stressed the Shermans' limited firepower, emphasizing that maintaining their front toward the enemy ensured safety. The first Panther commanders to witness Sherman rounds breaching mantlets and detonating stored ammunition learned otherwise. Survivors carried that knowledge back to their units, spreading awareness that American tanks now had rounds capable of defeating Panthers. By the afternoon of September 19th, German tank commanders were reporting to headquarters that American Shermans were equipped with new, more potent ammunition. Reports were inconsistent. Some suggested Americans had secretly fielded tank destroyers with 90mm guns, while others speculated that British 17-pounder Firefly tanks had been provided. The reality, that American industry had produced specialized ammunition that partially offset the Panther's armor advantage, was far more alarming for German strategists than any rumor. It signaled that American industrial capacity could respond to tactical challenges faster than German production could adapt. Fighting persisted through September 22nd, when major German offensives finally faltered. American forces had destroyed or disabled roughly 86 German tanks and assault guns, while losing only 25 Shermans and 7 tank destroyers. The kill ratio favored the Americans despite a technical disadvantage in individual tank performance. The Battle of Aerort was not only a tactical victory, but a psychological turning point. American crews discovered they could defeat Panthers without waiting for specialized tank destroyers or overwhelming air support, while German crews lost the mental assurance of invulnerability. For Germany, Aerort produced confusion and recrimination. The 113th Panzer Brigade, which had entered combat with about 90 tanks and assault guns, had fewer than 20 operational vehicles by September 29th. After-action reports struggled to reconcile defeat with the Panther's technical superiority. Part of the explanation lay in crew experience. The Panzer Brigade had minimal training, often arriving at the front with only weeks of instruction, whereas American tankers in the 4th Armored Division were veterans who had fought across France, understood combined arms tactics, and could read terrain for advantage. Yet training alone did not account fully for Panther losses, particularly those penetrations deemed impossible with standard American rounds. German intelligence examining destroyed Panthers found unusually small entry holes, hinting at subcaliber projectiles. Recovery of unexploded rounds near disabled tanks confirmed the truth. Americans had deployed tungsten-core HVAP ammunition. This discovery had major strategic consequences. Germany had developed a similar round, the Panzergranit 40, but its limited tungsten reserves were prioritized for industrial purposes rather than mass production of munitions. That Americans could field tungsten rounds at scale highlighted industrial and logistical advantages Germany could not match. The tactical impact of HVAP extended beyond Aracourt. Word spread among American armored units that the rounds could defeat Panthers under favorable conditions, boosting crew confidence. Previous hesitation and fear during the Normandy campaign began to wane. While crews still respected Panther capabilities, they no longer felt powerless. Morale, as much as technical capability, proved decisive. Confident crews sought advantageous positions and took calculated risks, while hesitant crews ceded initiative. HVAP, though scarce, gave Americans a chance to confront Panthers more equally. Even crews without HVAP benefited psychologically from knowing the ammunition existed. Commanders had to prioritize the limited supply carefully. Tank destroyers, focused solely on anti-tank missions, were given preference, while Shermans performing both infantry support and armored engagement often received fewer rounds. This created tension between tactical necessity and logistical constraints. Distribution across command levels sometimes produced inefficiencies. Some units had surplus HVAP, while others exhausted supplies within days and received no resupply despite urgent requests. During the German Ardennes offensive in December 1944, American Shermans faced extreme pressure. The Battle of the Bulge deployed hundreds of Panthers and Tigers in winter conditions, favoring defense and limiting Allied air support. Scarce HVAP ammunition became critical. Units ran out within days, and resupply lagged due to disrupted roads. Yet, American tank crews combined skill, coordination with infantry, artillery support, and judicious use of remaining HVAP to offset technical disadvantage. Bazooka teams disabled Panthers at close range, Shermans provided covering fire, and artillery observers struck exposed crew or damaged optics and tracks. When weather permitted, air support decimated German armor on approach routes. The offensive failed, leaving Germany's armored forces depleted, with hundreds of lost tanks and experienced crews. By early 1945, the strategic picture shifted decisively in favor of the Allies. Allied forces were poised to cross the Rhine, and Soviet armies advanced from the east. German industrial capacity collapsed under combined bombing, loss of territory with key resources, and severe shortages, including fuel and tungsten. Panther production fell sharply despite prior levels of 3,900 units in 1944. Even produced tanks often remained idle due to fuel scarcity. The limitations of HVAP, while less publicized, remain significant. Tungsten carbide cores, though excellent against armor under ideal conditions, were brittle. At impact velocities below roughly 2,300–2,500 FTS, cores could shatter instead of penetrating. This meant effectiveness decreased at longer ranges, with the optimal range against Panther mantlets near $1,000 min. Beyond that, the chance of core failure increased. Crews learned this through combat, sometimes at tragic cost. Firing beyond effective range wasted precious rounds and provoked return fire. Minimal formal training forced many to learn proper HVAP use through trial and error. Sergeant Francis Baker's experience on November 20, 1944, exemplifies HVAP's potential and limits. His Sherman, armed with a 76mm gun and HVAP rounds, engaged a Panther at about 800 yards. 7 rounds struck the side armor, yet penetration failed. The Panther withdrew rather than continued fighting. The episode demonstrated that HVAP was not an all-powerful solution. Successful use required tactics, careful targeting, correct range, and advantageous angles. HVAP improved odds, but skill and judgment remained decisive. The post-war analysis of HVAP ammunition revealed both its successes and limitations. Against the Panther's gun mantlet, at ranges up to 1,000 meters, HVAP was highly effective when hits were achieved, reliably penetrating and often causing catastrophic secondary explosions. Against the glacis plate, results were poor except at very close ranges and favorable angles. The extreme slope meant that tungsten-core rounds traveling at high velocity often ricocheted or shattered on impact. This meant Sherman crews still needed to maneuver for advantageous shot angles, flanking Panthers when tactically possible. The ammunition did not make Sherman tanks technical equals to Panthers, but it gave American crews a fighting chance in engagements where previously they had little hope of frontal penetration. The Korean War, beginning in June 1950, provided another combat test of HVAP effectiveness. American Sherman tanks, now primarily the M4A3E8 variant armed with 76mm guns, faced Soviet-built T-3485 tanks in North Korean and later Chinese service. Unlike the situation in Europe, where HVAP had been critically scarce, by 1950, tungsten supplies were no longer constrained by competing wartime demands and substantial stocks were readily available. American tank crews in Korea found that HVAP rounds easily penetrated T-3485 armor at normal combat ranges. The T-3485, while capable, possessed armor protection significantly inferior to the Panther. Its 90mm thick turret front and 45mm thick glacis plate could not resist tungsten-core projectiles fired at high velocity from 76mm guns. American Shermans in Korea achieved remarkably favorable exchange ratios against communist armor due partly to superior crew training but also significantly to the plentiful availability of HVAP ammunition. The vindication of the 76mm Sherman in Korea was bittersweet for veterans of European combat. The ammunition that could have been more widely employed in Europe proved devastatingly effective in Asia, when supply constraints no longer limited employment. The German perspective on American HVAP ammunition gathered from post-war interrogations and examination of captured documents revealed grudging professional respect and deep frustration. German ordnance officers recognized that American industry had solved the tungsten-core ammunition problem more successfully than German manufacturers. Despite Germany having pioneered the underlying technology, while Germany had developed tungsten-cored ammunition with the Panzer Granit 40 series, production limitations meant these rounds were never available in sufficient quantities. American production of HVAP, though also limited by tungsten scarcity, still exceeded German capability substantially. By late 1944. German tank crews interviewed after the war frequently mentioned American ammunition improvements as a significant factor that complicated their tactical situation. The knowledge that Sherman tanks could penetrate Panther-mantled SAT combat ranges meant German crews could not simply rely on frontal armor for protection. This forced more cautious tactics, slower advances, and greater reliance on defensive positions. But defensive warfare ceded initiative to American forces, allowing them to employ combined arms tactics that negated German advantages. The psychological impact of losing armor in vulnerability contributed to the increasingly defensive mindset that characterized German armored operations in 1945. Technical analysis of HVAP projectiles recovered from German tank wrecks provided German engineers with detailed understanding of American ammunition design. The tungsten carbide core surrounded by lightweight aluminum body sections represented efficient use of scarce strategic materials that maximized penetrating power while minimizing tungsten consumption per round. The lightweight carrier body allowed higher velocities without excessive barrel wear, while the dense tungsten core retained kinetic energy over distance far better than steel penetrators. German engineers recognized these advantages, but lacked the industrial capacity and material resources to respond with similar developments. By late 1944, German tank and ammunition production focused entirely on maintaining output of existing designs rather than developing new ammunition types. The Panther's KWK 4275mm gun already possessed excellent penetrating power with standard ammunition against Allied tanks. So developing improved German rounds was not the critical priority. Developing new ammunition would require tungsten Germany could not spare and retooling that factories struggling under air attack could not accommodate. German tanks in the final year fought with ammunition designs dating to 1942 and 1943, while American ammunition continued improving. The Battle of Aracourt's historical significance extended far beyond immediate tactical results. The engagement proved conclusively that American armored doctrine emphasizing mobility, combined arms coordination, superior logistics, and overwhelming material support could consistently defeat German tactical methods, relying heavily on superior individual tank performance. German commanders had designed their 1944 Panzer brigades around the Panther's technical capabilities, assuming armor and firepower would compensate for inexperienced crews and limited support. This assumption proved catastrophically false. The lesson was clear to military observers on both sides. Technical excellence in weapons design mattered and provided advantages, but operational excellence in combined arms warfare, superior logistics, and better training mattered more for achieving tactical and operational success. The impact of HVAP on individual tank crews deserves consideration beyond purely technical analysis. For American tankers who had faced Panthers with only standard ammunition during difficult Normandy fighting, the arrival of HVAP presented tangible hope. The ammunition did not eliminate the Panther threat, but provided a tool that offered reasonable chances of achieving penetration under favorable circumstances. This psychological boost contributed to improved performance and more aggressive tactics. For German tankers, the knowledge that American tanks now posed a credible frontal threat fundamentally altered tactical calculations. Otto Carrarius, a highly decorated German tank ace who commanded Tiger tanks and survived the war, wrote extensively in his post-war memoirs about the psychological impact of facing enemies who could penetrate his armor. The sense of invulnerability that thick armor provided was crucial to crew morale and aggressive tactics. When that sense eroded, crew performance suffered measurably. Panther crews facing HVAP-equipped Shermans experienced this erosion of confidence. The mantlet became a known vulnerability that competent American crews could exploit. This knowledge made Panther crews demonstrably more cautious, slower to engage, and generally less willing to take tactical risks. The strategic implications of HVAP development extend to broader questions about technological competition in modern warfare and the crucial importance of industrial capacity. Both American and German research establishments possessed competent engineers and sophisticated understanding of ballistics and armor penetration. Both recognized the value of tungsten-core ammunition early in the war, and both developed functional designs. The critical difference came down to industrial capacity and resource availability rather than scientific knowledge. American industry could produce HVAP in quantities sufficient to influence battlefield outcomes meaningfully, though never enough to fully equip all units. German industry could barely produce enough to conduct testing. This pattern repeated across numerous weapon systems throughout the war. Germany developed sophisticated and often technically superior weapons, but could not produce them in quantities that affected strategic outcomes. American industrial capacity produced less sophisticated but highly effective equipment in overwhelming numbers. The M4 Sherman was objectively not the best tank of World War II by most technical measures, but American factories produced approximately 49,324 of them compared to approximately 6,132 Panthers. This 8:1 production ratio, combined with ammunition improvements like HVAP that reduced the technical gap, proved strategically decisive. The post-war careers of veterans who fought at Aracourt reflect the enduring impact of these combat experiences on military thinking. Lieutenant Colonel Creighton Abrams, who commanded the 37th Tank Battalion at Aracourt with distinction, rose to become United States Army Chief of Staff and gave his name to the M1 Abrams main battle tank. The lessons Abrams learned about combined arms warfare, the critical importance of crew training, and the necessity of adequate ammunition influenced his entire career and the doctrine he helped develop. The M1 Abrams was deliberately designed with a powerful 120mm smooth bore gun and sophisticated ammunition types, including depleted uranium penetrators that serve functionally the same role HVAP served in World War II. German veterans of Panther units who survived the war and later joined the West German Bundes brought different but equally important lessons. They had personally experienced the limitations of possessing technological superiority without the industrial base and logistics to support it. Bundes armor doctrine during the Cold War emphasized quality and training while explicitly recognizing that West Germany could not match Soviet numerical superiority. But Bundesplanners, informed by wartime experience, also emphasized ammunition effectiveness. The Leopard 1 and later Leopard 2 main battle tanks used sophisticated ammunition designs, informed by the realization that ammunition technology and crew training mattered as much as armor thickness. The conclusion of World War II in Europe, marked by Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, ended the immediate tactical need for HVAP ammunition against Panthers. American ordnance officers systematically examining destroyed vehicles found clear evidence of HVAP penetrations on some wrecks, confirming the ammunition's effectiveness under favorable conditions while noting its limitations. Panthers hit by HVP typically showed penetrations through the mantlet or turret face when struck at favorable angles, but rarely through the glacis plate, which remained highly resistant. This pattern validated American tactical doctrine that emphasized flanking maneuvers and creating favorable engagement angles. The comprehensive post-war analysis concluded that while HVAP meaningfully improved Sherman capabilities against heavy German armor, the truly decisive factors remained overwhelming numerical superiority, vastly better logistics, complete air superiority, superior artillery support, and more effective operational doctrine. The transformation of American tank crews from mid-1944 to early 1945 reflected the cumulative impact of combat experience, improved equipment availability, and familiarity with specialized ammunition, including HVAP crews that landed in Normandy in June 1944, often felt genuinely apprehensive about facing German armor, particularly Panthers and Tigers. By early 1945, after months of sustained combat, significant training improvements, increased availability of 76mm Shermans, and growing familiarity with HVAP ammunition, American tankers approached engagements far more confidently. This psychological shift had direct tactical consequences. Confident crews fought more aggressively, took calculated risks when opportunities appeared, and exploited tactical advantages. While HVAP ammunition alone did not create this transformation, its availability and proven effectiveness contributed meaningfully to improved American armored force morale and tactical performance. The legacy of HVAP development continues influencing modern ammunition design. American armor doctrine from 1945 onward consistently emphasized ammunition effectiveness as a critical component of tank design. Modern tank ammunition uses depleted uranium or tungsten alloy penetrators, materials chosen for essentially the same density and hardness properties that made tungsten carbide effective in World War II. The core concept remains unchanged. Focus maximum momentum energy into a small, extremely dense projectile traveling at the highest feasible speed. The progression from the 1944 HVAP rounds to modern armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot ammunition demonstrates how fundamental lessons from World War II continue to shape military technology. Soviet and later Russian armored projectile development followed strikingly similar trajectories, independently acknowledging that penetration capability relies heavily on projectile composition and energy delivery. The worldwide tank ammunition industry traces its technological foundations to the HVAP experience, where engineers first proved that specialized rounds could partially negate armor advantages. September 19, 1944, when First Lieutenant Merwin Menn's Sherman crews first confronted Panthers with HVAP shells at Aracourt, represented a genuine turning point in the psychological dynamics of armored combat. German crews, who had previously fought confidently behind their armor, discovered that American tanks could pose a serious frontal threat. American crews, once feeling outclassed, gained significant confidence knowing they now had ammunition capable of defeating Panthers under favorable conditions. This shift in combat mindset, enabled by tungsten-core rounds manufactured in American factories, influenced every subsequent armored engagement in the European theater. HVAP ammunition, though never supplied in ideal quantities, delivered sufficient enhanced performance to transform American tankers from cautious defenders into assertive attackers willing to confront German armor directly. The crews who fired those initial HVAP rounds, witnessing tungsten cores pierce armor once thought invulnerable, proved that industrial capability and material science applied effectively to urgent tactical challenges. could overcome seemingly insurmountable technical disadvantages. This crucial lesson, learned at considerable cost across Europe's battlefields, remains highly relevant for military strategists facing the technological hurdles of modern warfare.